Hello everyone, welcome to Coaching the Female Athlete number 3 with Vicki Harber.
Thanks, Aaron. That's great. Thanks everybody for joining us today. This is our third GoTo Recap session around coaching the female athlete. And just before we get started, actually, our guest today, Liz Jepsen, who is head coach of the University of Alberta Pandas Soccer squad. I've known Liz for many years, and we've kind of shared a lot of similar pathways, but different over the time at the University of Alberta, and soccer being that common conversation point. So Liz actually just asked, you know, how did these recap things get going? And so just some of you might be new to this, some of you might be well aware of it, but it's always good to reflect why we're doing these sessions. And in running a coaching female athlete workshop, it was last November when I was in the Calgary and Airdrie area, where over the course of 2 nights there was about 450, close to that, coaches who had signed up for this coaching female athlete workshop. And when there's that many people that are interested in this topic, it was so compelling that I thought, you know what, let's try and do something to continue conversations around coaching female athletes. Hence, with the support from Alberta Sport Connection and the crew at Sport for Life, we thought, let's run these and get some people in that work very closely in the coaching female athlete area. So, with that brief introduction to why we're here, as we go through, I believe that everybody's in a muted state. And if you wish to ask questions, provide comments or stories along the way, please raise your hand. There's a little icon that you can do to raise your hand within the GoTo platform. Aaron's going to be managing those raised hands. If you're a wee bit uncomfortable actually speaking, there's an opportunity to add your questions into the question box. And again, Aaron has full liberty to interrupt at will and ask those questions during any pause points. So glad to have you here, and we'll get started. So thanks for coming, Liz.
Thanks for having me.
And it's always a bit odd when I've known somebody for so long about sort of where to get this started, but it's really for the benefit of the others around. Let's just start maybe with a bit of your own background and around, kind of what you're doing now, and we'll start with that.
Well, my background with what I'm doing now, I guess primarily I'm the head coach of the University of Alberta Pandas Soccer team. This is my 13th year and as head coach, and it's such an interesting position because really, besides coaching the team in the fall, you're kind of a jack of all trades around recruiting and marketing and developing and running tournaments and preparation for training and whatnot. So at this point in April, what I'm doing is closing off my year-end budget and administration, which is a really huge capacity, and I am looking into the future for potential athletes, you know, planning what we'll be doing for next season, preseason, all that.
And also another unique feature about you being at the University of Alberta is you have the varsity commitments, all of which you just talked about, plus you also have some academic teaching and instruction requirements as well. So not only evaluating athletes, but students within our undergraduate program.
Yeah, it's a really interesting part of the job, actually. Is as a former teacher, I always loved working with students, and my teaching side of my position at U of A allows me to stay in the classroom. So I teach the profession of coaching in a module perspective. So myself, Howie Draper, who's the head coach of Pandas Hockey, Scott Edwards, who's the head coach of Pandas Basketball, and Jim Dennison, who is a PhD within our Masters in Coaching. We all get together to teach different aspects of that course.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do that, and I also sit on some committees like the IAC, which is about all inter-athletics committee at U of A. And this past year I was a reviewer for excellence in scholarships, so all of our entry exams. So I got to read 25 really amazing essays on for students who are coming into U of A for scholarships.
Wow. And I'm so glad you mentioned your initial ground and coming up through this as a teacher as well. And so I often talk about coaching actually really being a form of a teacher as well. So clearly you haven't left that pathway at all. And so prior to coaching at the University of Alberta, did you kind of get your feet wet in the coaching area prior to coming to U of A?
Yeah, actually I did. I played competitive soccer in the major league here in Alberta until I was 35. So when you're playing in that competitive sport, you can't actually coach in the competitive sport. So I was a teacher. I started actually coaching basketball when I was 18, when I completed my high school diploma. And then I went on to U of A, to Campus St. John, and I loved working with people, and I always wanted to coach. So I went back to my high school and was a coach for the junior team's basketball. And then when I completed my degree, I actually had the good fortune of starting the day after I completed my degree. I started teaching as a French immersion teacher, and somebody who would coach anything. There's a couple aces in my pocket there. So I started at Paul Kane High School, and I coached senior girls volleyball. I coached senior girls basketball. I coached badminton and soccer. And so I've always loved coaching any sport. And I think as a first-year teacher, that's what you do, is you coach everything. As I moved into becoming more senior, year 3, I primarily focused on coaching senior girls basketball, and that's really where I put all my time in coaching. So I had done Alberta Summer Games teams in basketball, and had a pretty good record with coaching the senior girls basketball team.
How fun.
Yeah, and then when back in 2001, when Tracy David, my former head coach, was leaving the Pandas, the assistant coach at the time, who was a good friend of mine, Kelly Vandergrift, she and I go, why don't you apply to be head coach, and I'll be your partner in crime, right? So I'll be your assistant coach. I'm there on side for you, whatever you need to do, and that's kind of how I started coaching soccer.
Yeah, wow. Because I was there in the faculty. I started there in 91, and I remember that's when Tracy David was still there, and the transition to Kelly. And it's funny because I had forgotten that you were the assistant coach at that time, but then I do remember you transitioning into head coach. Yeah. Yeah,
well, it was quite a funny piece because I happened to be on mat leave with my second child. So I had assistant coached before kids, and then I started having kids. So I bring my little nuggets to the field, and you put them on a blanket. And when they're under 1, it's good because they don't move very much, right? When my son was 1.5, he was walking, so I brought my computer just the day when everything was getting mobile, and I put it on the ground so to keep him entertained, and he actually walked across it. A brand new MacBook. You live and you learn. Yeah. It was easier. I was still playing basketball at the time, and it was easier to play because you put them in a playpen in a gym that was enclosed, right? Yeah. Soccer field's wide open; they can get anywhere. Yeah. So yeah, I was on mat leave with son number 2, and then Kelly decided to take an interim leave, and I remember. There's so much tacit knowledge in coaching, knowing how routines are and what happens here and who you go see, that I felt for the Pandas and I felt for U of A. I actually wasn't going to return back as assistant coach that year. I was just going to teach full-time, well, I was going to finish off my mat leave, teach full-time, coach basketball, and thought that might be enough. So when Kelly stepped away, I had dropped in the office and I went in and I said, well, if you guys can't find the head coach that you want, it'd be my pleasure to step in for 2 months. And I'll cover up the coaching. I won't do recruiting. I won't do all those other things that coaches do that I thought I knew about, but I really didn't know everything. And yeah, that's how I got my start as head coach. They took me up on the offer.
Jeez, that is quite an introduction. And but then you stayed. You stayed.
Yeah, U of A does that too.
Yeah.
The University of Alberta just has such a tradition of excellence, and no matter where you are, it inspires you really to be the best you can be and to work with all these amazing people, be it from the athletes or the university students, your colleagues. So it's quite an amazing environment. And I have to, give a shout out to the female coaching environment there, because the University of Alberta really made it possible for me to exist with my kids, right? As a teacher, you have quite a predictable environment with kids. You know, you'll have your summers with them. You know, you'll have your evenings. Now, because I coached basketball, it was a little bit different, but so I did have some of my leisure hours away from my kids, right? But the unique thing about coaching as a female coach with the university is I could have some daytime hours with my kids. So, for example, when they were in kindergarten, I could go volunteer in class and not have to pay for a sub as I would have with a teacher.
Yes, yes.
Of course, the flip side being that I was gone every evening. My husband learned how to make supper, sort of. My kids learned how to cook early. And I was gone on weekends. But, you know, the really great thing was that the U of A, everybody in the athletics department, they really encouraged me to have my kids around when I could.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we came up with different strategies. Sometimes I'd have, you know, a babysitter at the field. Eventually, I actually had a nanny that I brought that I'd bring my kids to the field once a week. Just quite simply, I couldn't not see them that one day. So there had to be some sort of concession when I was gone away coaching weekends and whatnot. But full support from the U of A, and I think, you know, the coaches like Lori Eisler, who had her kids. Lori Eisler coached, I think, finals with her baby in Iran. Which actually is ironic because my oldest son, both my kids are born November 13 and 5, and national championships are that week.
Yeah.
Right. So my very first, my oldest son was due November 8th, and I was an assistant coach coaching in a final, the national championship final, November 8th, and he came out November 13th. We had a conversation. Said, "Don't come early. Don't come down." And then we got a silver. We got a silver at nationals to UBC.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later he came.
Wow.
Now you come.
Wow. Wow. That is amazing. So you see, as well as I know you, I'm glad we did this because I get to learn some more things.
Yeah.
You've mentioned some the other unique feature around coaching in your piece is at the university. And it's such a different kind of environment where you've got that high level of academics combined with that tradition of excellence. And it is, when we think about, you know, not all stages of coaching, I mean, clearly there are differences, and yet I think our university environment, particularly in Canada, I agree with you around U of A, the way of blending academics with that athletic excellence is something that I think they do really well, for sure.
I think it's an interesting piece. I know whenever I'm looking at student athletes to come to U of A, one of the first questions is always, are you a student first? Right? Because U of A has so many gifts to offer from an academic standpoint, I mean, athletics aside, that at the end of the day, we want to be certain that that athlete completes their 5 years and gets that degree, or 4 years, depending which route they go.
Yes, yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And you've mentioned something as well that, again, as women coaching, I often say until it becomes a mystery about who the boy, you know, when you conceive and make a child, you know, the mystery of is it a boy or a girl, and until that mystery extends to who carries the pregnancy, that I think, yeah, for now, you know, women have a different kind of condition within coaching because of those that choose to become parents. And so I'm going to hang on to that one for a minute because that I think will flow better a little bit later. Sure. Because I think that has been identified for donkey's ages as being an obstacle or a barrier that gets in the way of women who are on that coaching pathway. And when motherhood happens, parenthood and family, it's tough.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation.
Yeah, and then to hear though that U of A embraces that, I think again is a shout out to the environment that enables that. So with, you know, some great introduction around, you know, your coaching background and how you kind of converted from your own soccer playing into being a coach, the game of soccer itself, probably in that time that you have been coaching, I mean, I kind of see it as undergoing quite a bit of change. And you know, whether we want to look at the women's national program, what's going on in the province, what's going on in the city, and albeit probably a large question, but around maybe not some of the biggest changes, but what are some of those changes over your own journey in coaching have you seen to that game of soccer?
Mm-hmm. Well, considering that when I first started playing club soccer, so I think club soccer started the year before I started playing it. Okay, so I would have been the first club, I think I was the second year of club soccer in Alberta, in Edmonton, sorry. I played on the first Canada Summer Games team ever. Okay. Date myself. And of course, University Soccer in Alberta started in 1988, so I started in 1989. So what's changed about the game? Well, I don't think the talent has changed. All right. So the minds and the females that are coming in, there's always, they have that same talent, right? So I think that if we could bring, say a Tracy David, who a former player in Alberta, top player, or a Kelly Vandergrift, looking at the coaches in around here, a Carol Holt, they all have the same great soccer minds. I think the difference is that now female coaches are having, more female coaches are having expert coaches or licensed coaches coaching them earlier, which means they're more proficient from a technical standpoint, right? So there's fewer moms and dads, that are running the teams in the club level. I think that from a training standpoint is that there's more coach education going on. So there's a great effort to have all coaches coaching with the same technique. And of course, every coach has their own sort of Kentucky Fried Chicken special secret, right? So they all bring their own unique thing. I'd say probably the biggest change, certainly at the university level, is the level of trainedness of the athlete. So they have had more technical touches with I'm going to say more trained coaches, but also from a physical standpoint is I think that there's more sports science going into the training. So rather than just having hours and hours on pavement or a coach running you to death to get you there, that I think programs are looking to bring in experts in those fields.
Yeah. And so then you talk about the players around differences in that kind of readiness and technical piece. Other observations around changes in the players that you've experienced over time? And I guess I'll let you speak to that because I know we've had some conversations.
I've heard from the time that I was teaching, and I still hear it now, could have been in 1990, 1995, 2000, 2005, is the question of entitlement, right? And I don't know that I feel that there is a change in that the athletes that we have are more entitled. I don't think that at all. I actually don't think the athletes changed. I just think the time has changed, right? So in 1989, when I was playing, if I had a $500 scholarship, that was great, right? But that was the nature of the beast because we were new females. We were females up and coming, and the sport was up and coming. Now at the university, say in the mid-2000s, we had more scholarship money because the Pandas who came before us did the groundwork.
Yeah.
Right? And there were some great people who invested time in that. And then now we have that, we have the next cycle of that happening. And I think the biggest thing that I see less of now is in our core that we had back in the early stages of the university, we had a lot of give back, right? And I'm not sure that we're as good at giving back right now as the whole group, because there's more people that have gone through, and I think the up and coming athletes could benefit more from the mentorship or the knowledge of those who've gone through.
Yeah, that's such a great point around sort of that the generosity back to the community that they've come from as well. Yeah, that's interesting. Because within that then, and again, not to say because of what has happened to the players or not, to the game or not, if you were to describe your own coaching trajectory around some of the things that that have been, let's say, some hallmark learning moments for you, how you and your coaching has changed over time to address, let's say, it's not the athlete that's changed, it's this social condition almost that's changed.
Mm-hmm.
And how have you responded to that then?
Well, I think that you have to be a consummate learner, right? So there's some good mechanisms for feedback on things that, ways the program can grow, and you yourself as a coach has to grow. Interestingly enough, I recall this one moment when I was probably, I'd say 26, 27 coaching, and that was hardcore. I was going to make cutthroat decisions. Everything was black and white, very black and white. And I had a grade 12 player who was point guard, and I had a grade 10 player, so this basketball, who was a better point guard. And I was making these really tough decisions about performance first, right? And perhaps not understanding the whole athlete, because the grade 12 was certainly bringing things to the table that a grade 10 couldn't yet, from not just the playing side, but from the social emotional side. And I had a parent come up to me and she said, "Oh, just wait till you have kids. You'll understand a little bit of what's going on right now around playtime, not playtime," right? And I think as I've gotten older and I have more experience coaching, is I look to more of the person and the athlete, right? One of the really tricky things to coaching at the varsity level is you're making so many decisions around outcome-based, right? So you're trying to get your team to a national championship. So at times you're not nurturing the player as much as you'd like to, the person as much as you'd like to. And I think I think I always wanted to do that, but one of the pieces that I certainly try to really remember in all the coaching is that person, right? Some of the most special things that I have now as a coach are being invited to somebody's wedding that I coached, right? Or like calling to have or one of my players calling me up to say I got engaged, right? Or I have a new baby, right? And so while it's epic being on the field and winning those big games, there's so many other pieces that I think you'll remember more than just coaching that game.
Yeah. And if I can ask this question, you can punctuate it now or later. But one of the reasons this whole piece around coaching female athletes comes about is to what extent is it different or similar to coaching male athletes? And I know from the history you've described that your lion's share of experience has been in coaching female athletes in different sports. Yet you have well, actually you've got 3 boys at home.
True.
Yeah. That have you perceived any differences, and not to say that the differences matter, but it's almost kind of cushioning back again. How does it influence how you coach? Because when you talk about the entire athlete and that the female athlete in what we understand so much around that, what I call that social envelope that she becomes a part of. So thoughts on that?
Well, that's a really interesting question. So just a little bit more background is I coached my son in club soccer from the time he was 10 to 9 to 14. So it was a very competitive team. The team went on to go to nationals last year, win provincials and go to nationals. I stepped away from coaching. So I think the biggest piece, the difference between coaching male and coaching female athletes as a female coach, is that I understand a lot of the mindset of the female athlete and what they went through. So when there's an autocratic male coach, when there's an unorganized male coach, when there's an organized but not knowledgeable female coach, right? So I kind of I've had all those. But as a female coach and a male coach, the mentality is a little bit different. So what I found when I was coaching boys is the boys want to be like, rah, rah, rah. And that's not a female coaching thing so much.
Yeah.
Or at least not in my environment, right? And so I always, that was one thing that I knew that I had to bring in for the boys.
Bring in for the boys, meaning?
Well, I wanted, I wasn't going to be all like, go kill him, go stick a tackle, like that.
Okay.
It's just not my nature, right? So I felt like I always needed some guy in there that was going to be pumped up to relate with how the boys relate before a match, right? And that could be age or male. I'm not really sure, but it just wasn't, because I haven't coached in those younger years with girls, right? So by the time that you get into high performance coaching, the female athlete, there is some rah-rah, but more preparation.
Okay, well, that's great. Aaron, are there any questions that are coming in?
No, nothing yet. So if you do have a question, go ahead and put in the question box, and we will get to that.
Or raise your hand. I think we're a small group today, so feeling comfortable to hear from you if you've got any questions or comments at this point. Are there any comments actually around that comparison point again, around experience differences in coaching males and females?
Have you ever experienced coaching females within like a co-ed type environment? So any specifics with females within other males within the team or anything like that, and how that?
Not co-playing, but we do a lot with our different programs with our Pandas and our junior Pandas, as is the model that is set by head coach John Herdman. One of the things that our Rex program recommends is to have female athletes playing against boys, right? And it's been a long-standing methodology of training the female player because it teaches different things, right? When females play against females, it's typically a possession game, and they're very team-oriented, whereas the males are very good going 1v1. So as soon as you make a mistake as a female, you get scored on. So I think the interesting thing, not always, but often, right, because of the speed and the power and how quickly they can get it away. I think one of the interesting things I've seen with girls playing against boys is just the response by the athletes, right? So we seem to have a group of female players that are always like, let's go get them. Doesn't matter who we're playing, doesn't matter what the result is, we want to compete. And then there's another group that are opposed to playing in that situation where they know the odds are stacked against them, right? As opposed to taking it on as a learning experience. And that's a hard mentality to change. We've talked about it a lot. I've tried to debrief it, but I'm not really sure exactly. I suppose I could come up with some reasons why I think it is, but at the end of the day, I'd love to see all female athletes just step in and compete as much as they can, right?
Yeah.
Boy, girl, 15, 22, doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
I think the best athletes, the best female athletes aren't necessarily the fastest, fittest, most talented. I think it's the ones who have the determination and who aren't afraid to compete when those moments, those challenging moments.
Mm-hmm. And, go ahead.
Just don't want to go off topic, but your engagement with your alumni with your post-secondary team, I think, is very interesting, as University of Sport in Canada is. Any best practice you've had with engaging with your alumni about bringing that support back to your team? I know my sister-in-law is an alumni of the University of Alberta hockey team, for the women's team, and they've gone through this small school. They go through many financial issues year to year, and they've really done a good job of rallying the alumni and bringing the women back together. Any best practices you have around the success of your program with that?
I think it's just trying to keep them in the loop and keep them interested and letting them know the stories, right, of what's going on. There's so many pieces that are steeped in tradition, right? So what one gal would have done, like a player that would have played in 2000, a player that's playing in 2012 is probably experienced. So when they can get together and share those stories. We had a really neat event a couple years ago. It was called Pandemonium. And it was a dinner, a fundraiser for scholarships, actually. And one of our former athletes, Aisha Alpha, is now she played for 5 years and went on and traveled the world doing whatever job, and she's now with CBC. She's a comedian. So she came in. Yeah, she does a few different things. So she came in. And we had, it was a comedy night, so she brought in 2 other comedians, and it was absolutely epic because she understood the culture, she's super funny to begin with, but she also understood some of the inside jokes that we athletes would have about the soccer playing scenario. So I think that's one way, and like having those events, but really just, well, not just that event, but any event that you can try and get those alumni back together, remembering about what they did, and then seeing the group in front of them. So coming to our graduating player day. So we also have a graduating player day this past year. We had a dinner the night before, and the alumni that would have been in their final year, where the gal that was graduating, they all came up because they wanted to, you know, support her on this. It's that bittersweet moment, right? Like you've finished your playing, and you'll never be able to play university again once you're done. It's the difference between playing club soccer, so you'll never play again. So those are a couple strategies that we have. Always looking for more.
Yeah.
I think the one that we have trouble with my alumni association with baseball, I know I don't want to stay on topic here, is engaging the generations. So you've been around, obviously you're a leader, you've been a long time. So how is you get any specific stuff about how to bridge the gap between this 4-year kind of segment and this 4-year, this 5-year, like a representative or anything like that?
No, you know, I find that everybody gets into different ages and stages of their life, and that kind of is all-consuming. And I would imagine, knowing how much each person has given at the time where this is their primary focus, I think as their age and stage draws them to something else, is you see them really giving to that something else. So Facebook is an interesting one. So we have an alumni group and we reconnect on that. And I think it's been really interesting seeing some of the gals that I played with as a first year, as fifth years, and the things that they're involved in. And, you know, it could be, I know one of the alumni seems to give a lot of time into the Humane Society. And so I think a big check mark is that we know that while our alumni aren't always here and fully present, we know that they're really present in the community. Okay. Another neat thing that we have this year is our Green and Gold Awards, Alumni Awards. So this was started within our Alumni Association 2 years ago, which it recognized the alumni as they go on to contribute back to the community. So last year we had Veronique Mayer. She's now teaching internationally, and she's been doing a lot of great things there. And so she won an alumni award for international engagement. I don't know exactly the award title. And then we had another, which is Carly Miller, which was for somebody who's a really active young alumni under 5 years. They won awards. She also won an award, and then this year we have 2 more alumni recipients. So award recipients. So we do know that the alumni are very active.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point though, because it again, from the university perspective, the university around community engagement and where varsity athletics, I've often thought, have opportunities to become that iconic status around not only coming to advance your education, but for those, you know, advancing their own athletic journey. And then even when those years are done, to what extent can that university still remain an important hub and sort of the heart of those people who have been there as student athletes, you know? So it's, yeah, it always becomes interesting around support for the program that really kind of goes beyond the financial piece of it, albeit that's always going to be important. But to have that emotional and social support going beyond, I would see being very important. Very important, yeah.
I think it's a challenge across all ages, right? Be it with the girls, incoming players you're working with, or the current players, or the alumni. So we had a really great event on Friday night, and it was giving Block A sweater to all of the female athletes who hadn't received Block A. So the Block A, you get this Block A sweater after you've competed for 3 years. So we like to say you earn your Block A, because 3 years of playing varsity sport ain't no cakewalk. Right, you got a lot of hours put in. You've had a lot of hours, and sometimes it's in the most valuable, like in what seems the most meaningful, which is always playing. And sometimes it's by being a role player, coming in off the bench and going to training every day and listening to the coach and having your own ideas and still giving your, you know, support to the coach, belief in the coach, even though, you know, it's tricky when you're not playing. So it is prior to 1989, female athletes were given this sweater. They were given a pin. So what the University of Alberta did starting last year is they went back all the way to the very first athletics teams and gave every female athlete one of these. So we had former student athletes who were 95 or 100 up on stage last year receiving this for the first time.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. And so then this year we had, it was 1970 to 1974. And that's a pretty big investment. I bet you the sweater is $100 to $150, right?
Right.
Per person. So if you can think of how many there's, you know, getting, and it's not necessarily funding, you know, where does that money come from, right? There's always the funding question. So yeah, this year we had athletes from 1970 to 1974. So one of my first athletes that I coached as a soccer player, and I had taught in high school and coached in basketball.
Yeah.
So she played soccer and basketball and then came in and made Pandas after I moved away to being head coach. Her mom got her RCA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I got to have a picture of me in RCA with her, my blockade with this former athlete's alumni. So, so you know, it is a big circle.
It is.
Background. It's sometimes just the timing.
Yeah, another way to create connections. Yeah, that are rather timeless. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So a little bit of a shift here, but around the coaching piece. And again, one of the issues commonly is that most of our female athletes across a lot of different sports are coached by males. And from your experience, where would you say, I mean, if we looked at the varsity, the Canadian varsity system, all the teams, where's that distribution, male and female coaches?
Well, in Canada West, actually, we have probably one of the best. We have University of Manitoba has a female coach, University of Victoria has a female coach, then there's me. So that's 3 of the 16. And I was just counting throughout the other, there's a 4th, Amy Anderson from Winnipeg. I knew I was going to mess up on that. But I think in the RESQ, there's only 1. And I was thinking about that this morning, and I don't know that between the other conferences there's more than 3. So there's 56-ish teams in soccer. So that's a very small percentage when you do math, right? Yeah.
Do you think that's an issue?
Do I think it's an issue? No, I think it's an issue and a reality, right? The fact of the matter is, to be a varsity coach as a female, it's a different environment. So first of all, there's not very many of you. So I know, like, if you're single and you want to meet the man of your dreams, become a female soccer coach, because you're always going to spend your time with 49 men, right? But the fact of the matter is, it's a really tricky environment because, for the most part, you're making a big sacrifice in that if you're going to have a family, you have to find a way to make it work. So all the female coaches in Canada West, I'm the only one currently who has kids. And I think I know of one other that was coaching with kids. So there seems to be some decision making around that. And I also think there's, maybe this is going to start a little flame here, but I think there's a perception of knowledge, right? So that when a female coach comes into that environment, there seems to always be a chest butting of how much do you really know as a female coach?
Yes.
As opposed to some given tacit knowledge towards the male coach.
Yes.
That they know more or have more experience.
Yes, and that actually, I mean, that, no flame aside, that bears itself out in the literature. Is that one of the greatest things I remember reading was what ends up happening around perceived differences is that going forward, either for an internal job promotion or for advancement or even a basic job application, women typically don't apply until they have all 100% of the criteria, and men will step up to the plate with about 50%.
I think I just saw that in the elections.
Yeah. And so there is this perception of women knowing less, having less credentials, regardless of what the data, what the reality comes forward as. And I think that trickles into many other parts, not simply sport as well.
To that point, that was one of the reasons why I was keen to work with a female athlete, right, at the varsity level or any age, is that I had some particular strong role models through my foundation years, say my mother to be one, and the fact that there was always a lot of encouragement to play sports without judgment, right? Without being in your ear and saying this is how you need to play, but just to try it. So a lot of encouragement that way from even to my phys ed teachers. I remember one in particular, because I was a late developer athlete, so I didn't make any great sport teams until I was probably in grade 11, which we know a lot of times our high performance is being tagged at 12, 13, 14.
Yes.
I would have been throwing the baby out with bath water. But my phys ed teacher inspired me and said, listen, if you really want to be a successful athlete, this is what you do, right? You play for your coach, you work as hard as you can, you find ways to be a leader. And that grew, you know, when I went on to play with both club and as well being coached by Tracy David. And one of the things that I firmly believed in is we've always done things certain ways because we have so many great male coaches who really put time in. But I have a different mindset because I'm a female and I know what a female is thinking. So lots of times when I'm coaching, I'll say something and I already know what's going through a female's head because I thought the same thing myself.
Yes, yes.
Right, and so I wanted to coach the female athlete because I felt that we could do things differently, right? Every male coach will bring something a little bit different to the table, just like every female coach.
Yeah.
And what I liked about it is here, I walked the walk, right? I'd been a club player. I'd been a successful club player. I'd been one who was up and coming. I'd gone to youth nationals. I played varsity both as a starter and as first one off the bench. So I had a lot of experience that I felt I could bring or would help me have some empathy with the player, but also know what it would take because I've done the coach education and I won the national championships, and that I could, you know, marry that all together to try and create this best experience for the female athlete on and off.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Would you like to see more female coaches in the mix?
I'd like to see the best coaches in the mix, and if the best coach is a female, then yes.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to see, and I think we need to have some patience around that. I get the sense, or I've seen a lot of up and coming female coaches. I've worked with them over the years, and there aren't enough that get into that head coach role, and usually I've had some practicum students, and by the time that they're done doing their practicum, they're like, it's a heck of a lot of work, and it's a challenging environment, and we're going to go this road instead.
Yes, yeah. So because you're again coming back to that varsity university environment is quite different, where you get a chance to spend time with students over time that could develop that coaching piece. Has that been, would there be any tweaks or changes that you might make to either encourage or alter the environment to make it more amenable for young females to step into coaching?
Well, I think we actually do create options for our young females to get into coaching, right? So we run our junior pandas. A lot of our female coaches come up and coach in there, and what we have done is created better hours for those up and coming coaches to coach in.
Okay.
So rather than going in evenings when they themselves are working, not working, when they themselves are playing, we go earlier on in the day, 4:30 to 6. So then they get to have that experience of coaching and not have to worry about their own playing careers being finished. And the same with the Pandas Soccer program. We bring in our alumni all the time to give them coaching experiences, and also, you know, keep in touch with club teams if they want to have somebody, you know, that way. But it is hard. I often get calls. Every year I'll have a ton of calls in the spring from different club coaches who have like this, oh, we want to have a female coach. You have 30 varsity players. I'm sure they'd love to, and it's just hard for them to understand that during the time from 6 to 9 they're maybe working a part-time job or playing themselves or not playing and having an evening off. And during the varsity season, you play every evening, right? So
because that's a constant issue across all sports as well, around getting more females in place. And again, I mean, this percolates into business and everywhere else around, is that that might be one of the greatest opportunities we have to shift some of the social mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the underlying thinking that, I mean, what do we know now? The study that came out of the UK is that young girls, by the age of 5, think their male counterparts are smarter. And so where does that come from? You know, that's not genetically.
Well, that has to be family-based, because I would say my mom was like, he's not smarter than you.
And I agree with you completely.
So
completely.
I was
Yes.
always willing to throw my cards on the table, even if I was misconceived
Yes.
sometimes.
And I think often the expression of those women that have the ones that have been able to navigate the system, do often come from those backgrounds that they have been given nothing short of messages around their capacity and potential that isn't based on an X or Y chromosome.
Mm-hmm.
At all, and I think that's, in fact, when you mentioned earlier around some girls who are more willing to step into the playing pitch with boys, I think sometimes that's a reflection of their upbringing, and we find that even with the youngest, where, you know, even at 5 and 6, where some parents will demand segregated gameplay. Mm-hmm. When there's really no reason for it. In fact, there's now growing evidence that it should be more co-educational experiences. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it teaches quite a bit. I remember in my phys ed 30 class, some of the best moments for me as an athlete was actually playing with boys, because they were going to go play hard, they were going to give it, and there was no judgment. Yes. Right? There was no girls. Sometimes, well, you know, there's some behaviors that they want to put on the group, and playing with boys lets you be a little bit more uninhibited, or let me be more uninhibited.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, you know, circling back to that female athlete, what you were just talking about there, that is one of the things that anytime when I'm working with a female athlete is an underpinning value or message is the fact that you can do anything, right? And that go bold into whatever you're going to try. And make plans, right, and take chances. And so, and it was actually one of my players who helped me learn that. And she was somebody that it was Laura McTavish, if you remember Laura McTavish.
I do.
Yeah, and she's gone on to be a doctor now, and she just knew what she wanted from life, and she planned it. And she put all these things in place. And it was a really good life lesson in helping me coach girls, because it helped me understand that those were pieces that you do, right? And that you have to learn to rise to the challenge, right? So when I'm working with a female athlete, I know one of the things is playing varsity sport. It's not a sell. It's like, what do you want to achieve in your life, right? How great do you want to be? And for them to understand that they can be great, right? And that they're always decision making. And I think that's one of the pieces from that I've seen from different male coaches is the being told to do something as opposed to being taught to learn to decide to do something.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's a great point.
And I think that for these female athletes, every time we tell a female athlete to do something, we do them a disservice, because we want to teach them to decision make. So when they're in their first moment where they have to say no, they know how to say no for the right reasons, because they've thought it through, right? Because they're critical decision makers, and I think sport gives that opportunity. Yeah,
that's such an important point around getting grounded in the opportunity to make decisions, and that's something, again, in my work across various sports, is when we even sort of aim to the highest heights, is what some of our national team coaches are talking about, a weakness in our high-performing athletes, and the ability to make decisions and to make the best possible decisions, and then in the moment recover from the decision that they've made, so that it isn't this spiral. And that often really does kind of harken back to those young developing years around how have we created a system that grooms decision makers as opposed to grooms those robotic doers. And I think our youth system as well can get kind of trapped
in those competitive leagues where it's all about winning and losing, the outcome,
Mhm.
as opposed to taking, creating alternative environments that build their ability to make decisions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really big piece that we have to keep in mind, and I think our high performance situations are often, high performance coaches will say, do this, do it this way, and this is what has to happen. And I think we have to find a happy medium, because certainly the high performance coaches know what needs to be done.
Yeah.
But we have to keep some mechanism in there for the athlete to be making decisions. And the tricky balance is that sometimes when the athlete makes that decision, it can be the wrong decision, right? And I mean, it's just a decision that's going to make a different outcome, right? Like you said with the spiraling. But it is easier for those top high performance coaches just to say, do this, because then it takes out potential trouble.
Yeah.
But for that athlete down the stretch and for happiness, maybe even in burnout or in intrinsic motivation, you're doing it because you want to be doing it, which I think will allow them to be more successful longer, right? When you're just told to do something, it could eliminate that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Do we have time to talk a little bit about Junior Pandas?
Sure.
Yeah, because that's happened since I left.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a bit about it, what you like about it, and what it does for you, and
well, what I like most about it is I get to work with high school age kids again.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I really missed that when I left the teaching. University girls are wonderful, but there's something neat about that age group as well, right? Because they're in that last stage of development, right? Before you send them off to the university. So from my perspective, it's really neat to work with that athlete. I think one of the most exciting things about it is getting to work with them in the university environment, right? So as I said, I worked with them in a high school environment. Different soccer in high school it's just playing matches. There's not a lot of development. But with the Junior Pandas, what we get to do is provide top training, top sports science, top facilities for girls who aspire to be what we say youth sport leaders. So when we're looking for the girls that we're working with, it is somebody who has that aptitude to play at the next level, but also has that mindset about being a critical decision maker, about having good communication processes, but also about being the best that you can be, right? So we're able to program with our coaches, like our sports, our physical coaches. I can go to them and I can say, okay, here's our periodized plan. This is how many times we're training. We're actually training in the dome, so the girls get to train in an 11v11 environment, which is unique in our capacity, right?
Yeah.
Being a winter sport, everybody trains in the gyms or indoor soccer centers. I trained my son's team, boys that were 5'11", in half soccer fields, so that's like 50 by 30, 45 by 30. You can't even run, right? So here we are. We can have them 3 hours a week in the dome, and the dome is 145 yards long because of the end zones and the whole soccer.
Yeah.
So we get to do all these amazing things with these up and coming athletes that people haven't done.
Yeah.
And then another really neat thing is that we can create these game situations that are different than you can do, because we're not playing in the boarded, though we play boarded because it's kind of fun too.
Right.
But we can take them, we can host University of Calgary, and then Junior Pandas can play University of Calgary and see what that varsity athlete looks like.
All right.
And sometimes, you know what? They get their butts kicked.
Yeah.
Right? But that's part of being an athlete. It's not just playing soccer. It's how do you react in moments of success, but also in moments of challenge.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, I can't do it. Or do you learn how to play better against an opponent? And because we have the 11 facilities, we can teach strategies and tactics, right?
Yes.
In the most natural way.
Yes.
Because we have all that space.
Yeah. So do you coach the Junior Pandas as well, or do you get some help with that?
I do all the programming, and then I'll come in and coach after season's done. I'll work with them once a week in some capacity, right? Sometimes it's just giving feedback. But no, we have D. Govender. He's an assistant coach of the Pandas, and he's the head coach of the Junior Pandas. Mm-hmm. So D's got a really interesting story because he coached recently a U18 team that went to nationals.
Oh, okay.
And it was interesting because his tagline then was that he was going to have all the girls ready to go and play start on a university team. That was what he was start on university.
Yeah.
And he told me that, and I thought, well, that's interesting because no 18-year-old player is not, it's going to be hard to start on a good university program, right? So one of the things that I found was that what he felt as a club coach, he knew about what he needed to do to start in a university program or exist. There was quite a big gap, right? And I see it year after year because every U18 coach feels that their players are going to start.
Yes, yes.
And year after year, they don't start, which is a really tough thing for that 18-year-old to come in and experience. You know, eventually they reconcile it. But the neat thing about the Junior Pandas is that it kind of brings together those two worlds, right? So it gives them a chance to know what a varsity program looks like, be trained by, and at times with varsity athletes. So we'll have our Junior Pandas train with our Pandas in our mentorship program. So then they get to see what that athlete looks like, and they get to know what the level looks like. So it really helps fill that gap where the knowledge isn't there, because unless you're doing it, you don't know.
No, but a great opportunity for transitioning as well. And getting a sense of that.
Yeah, well, we found over the past 2 years, so that this is year 3 of the Junior Pandas, but the athletes that are coming in are ready faster, right? So they already know, first of all, they're not overwhelmed, because typically you come into the Pandas as an 18-year-old and you've got all this varsity training, so you've got 12, 15 hours of athletics plus a university, and that's a big change.
Oh, huge.
Right? You're no longer being spoon-fed for your courses, right, for the content material. So we found that the tradition is better, and I'm not sure if it's just a snapshot of the athletes that we have now, but GPAs are higher. I'd say the culture is very vibrant. I mean, we've always had a vibrant culture. Performance has been great. Like last year we graduated 8. We had 8 players graduate or complete their degree or complete their eligibility.
Wow.
Right. So we were a young team this year, and I was a little bit apprehensive when you graduate all the stars. But the team's performance was outstanding, and again, I think it goes to that physical preparation, one of those changes in the game, and also the technical, that much more technical.
Right. That's exciting. Aaron, are there any comments or questions coming in? No? Okay. I'm mindful. We've got about maybe a minute and a half to go. This has been so fun. Are there any kind of closing, either tidbits, comments that you'd like to make? I sometimes wonder, if you could, if you could change one thing about either not so much the game of soccer, but the soccer system that. Because I hear from you loud and clear that experience at the university level is particularly rich for young women. Again, given all the right pieces coming into it.
I have 2 thoughts. Beauty, 2 thoughts. I think the very first thing is, I think university soccer in Canada provides so many opportunities for the female athlete, right? And be it that you play in youth sports or ACAC or college leagues. So I think that's one thing, is to inspire girls to go for it, right? And that I think there's enough opportunity that everybody can do it. Now, of course, it's tricky with schools because you're going to want to go maybe to your local or, but I think the other piece with that is that the universities are forever challenging themselves with facilities and experts. So in our Canadian system, we have a ton of schools that will boast competitive nature with anything down in the NCAA, and in an environment that may be more nurturing. And so I would love to see CSA really get their teeth stuck into the top programs in the youth sport to understand what we have to offer. Because I believe it's a gap in our system, and I believe we have very dedicated coaches that want to work to make Soccer Canada the best it can be. Right? So that's my first thing. And my second thing is, I wish soccer could be like play in the same time span that volleyball and basketball do. So what I would say is, as a varsity athlete, you come in and you play August to November, and you play your nationals in like the snow, which is, it's fun, it's tricky, it's different. But I think we're moving, I think we're changing, and I know at U of A now, we can have a whole off season in our dome. So what I say is, I challenge the other universities to get those facilities, and let's let our soccer athletes have the same experience as our basketball and our volleyball. Forget about the cost and the fact that traditionally volleyball, like we funded that for volleyball and basketball, but for soccer we remain the traditionalists with the outside game, and it is going to be different.
Yeah.
But that's just like beach volleyball is different, and that's like hockey in an outdoor arena. So I say let's move forward and be innovative and let our female athletes play 11v11 for 8 months and see where we get to.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And actually, the 2 points together become quite a complementary set of comments. Wow. So we are anything more from you, Erin? No.
I think
Okay. Well, Liz, I can't thank you enough. I've enjoyed this conversation just as much, if not more, than all the other ones we've had. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me and letting me talk about soccer, one of my favorite things.
All right. Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.